With the recent massive and in my personal opinion very well warranted success of the Fallout TV series, a lot of people are going to be getting into the Fallout games for the first time, which can be very daunting on approach considering there's well over 1,000 hours of content across 9 games. I'm not including the Fallout VR, several of which have their own story expanding DLC or downloadable content. This video is aimed a little bit more towards the casual gamer as I'm breaking out acronyms like DLC, and you might be thinking, what is this, rookie hour, Kevin? The bluff or bottom line up front is there is a slew of Fallout games, some better than others in certain aspects, story, game mechanics, and since all of us have jobs, school, or children, limited time to play this phenomenal and abominable, apparently, this sick-ass game series, I wanted to give my personal thoughts as someone that has played every single title, including the old school top-down originals, the mobile phone standalone, and the DLCs for all the console games. Well, they're on PC too, but you can definitely tell from some of the menus and interfaces, they're geared for consoles and controllers. I wanted to give my personal opinion as to which games you should focus your time on to get the most out of the Fallout universe and the overall experience that the games have to offer, that Bethesda formula that you constantly hear referred to, both positively and negatively, as it does need a little bit of support from the mod community, the brassiere of the mod community, for the big floppy uneven Bethesda beanbags that we love to windmill around. And while we're on the topic, I am going to dip my toe into both the vanilla experience, which means an unmodded version, perhaps what you'd get on a console, although the modern Xbox console does allow you to mod your game directly from the pause menu with supported mods from Bethesda, but it does block your ability to get achievements or trophies, which sucks. As we're on the PC side of the house, there's a mod to where you can still get achievements or trophies as long as it's not game enhancing modifications. You're not adding one-tap guns and stuff like that. Anyway, I'm getting well ahead of myself, but without further ado, dust off the pit boy and grab yourself some rad roach stew, because this is going to be a long one, broken into timestamps or chapters for easy digestion. And don't worry, the goo of my stew is rad free. Let's get it. Alrighty, Stallions and Stallionettes, welcome to the GamerHeaven. I am your host, AK40 Kevin. Now, I want to give a little quick disclaimer that this is all my personal opinion, and Fallout fans are very outspoken, very stern, firm, and blunt when it comes to their opinions as to which Fallout games are the best, where they slot in on a tier list, and of course, which ones you should focus on and play. So please don't batter me up and down the virtual block of the comment section if you disagree. So you might want to play the games in numerical order. However, the first couple games are very old school, top-down, turn-based combat, straight-up RPGs. So not ARPG, action RPGs, over-the-shoulder, third-person, probably what you're used to playing modern games. Having said that, they are definitely what laid the foundation, and all the core lore, I'm spitting verses today, all of the Fallout universe started from those games, and everything that you're used to seeing with Vault Dwellers and Deathclaws and Super Mutants and all the weapons, all the same in those games, and they're actually still really fun. I'd recommend maybe playing them on something like a Steam Deck when you're on the go. Granted, the text is really small, as they are still a smashing good time, but not really the core gameplay that you're really used to with a modern title. So having said that, you might want to look at some of the more modern games starting with Fallout 3. Although if you want to focus on the games in numerical order, so how they take place in the Fallout universe, technically that would be Fallout 76. Although I do not recommend starting there because that game just doesn't feel like a typical Fallout title, and the main reason being that it's an online, always multiplayer, free-to-play service game. In fact, you're greeted immediately with a terms of service page, and there's even a store, which they give you some freebies, but there you can spend real money, real caps, so to speak, on some cosmetics. Also, the sandbox, the map for 76, Appalachia. I do believe it's pronounced Appalachia, but I must have been popping my silly pills that day, which was just yesterday. I'm still editing the video this day, day 2. But I'm gonna let it slide. I'm gonna leave it in the video so we can all point and laugh at the silly guy that pronounces Appalachia, alopecia, whatever the hell I said in there. As cool as it looks with all the overgrown foliage, which usually you'd have to mod Fallout 4 to look like that, it looks really pretty, but there's really not the best landmarks or points of interest. Fallout 76 has gotten so much better than its launching condition. There was no NPCs to speak of, which is crazy because Fallout games are typically, Bethesda games are what are typically known for NPCs, and there were none. No real story to speak of, just running around encountering the occasional player and the free frequent bug or glitch. Having said that, the game's gotten a lot better, but the sandbox or map of Appalachia still isn't my favorite. You see a lot of repeat environments, and there isn't the best points of interest or landmarks, not to mention the story that's now been injected with patches or updates is still pretty floppy in my opinion, more limp than Fallout 4, which constantly catches flack for a shitty story. But a positive note I will say for 76 is it has the least toxic multiplayer community, online community I've ever seen. Generally high-level players will come by and drop loot, good guns for new players. I've never heard anybody talking shit or saying the N-word over comms or anything like that. It's generally a pretty wholesome community to speak of, and you also can't take damage or engage in PvP without both agreeing to it, so nobody's gonna run up and kill you over and over, cyberbully your ass off the game like GTA Online. But at its core, it does not feel like any of the Fallout games. For example, VATS doesn't freeze or slow time, rather it just highlights limbs. And there almost seems like some kind of a delay or lag in gunfights where you'll hit an enemy and then sometimes they just won't go down for a second, and that's because I guess it's an online server game. But furthermore than that, you can't pause and you can't really mod it. There are cosmetic mods, but since it is an online service game, real mods would technically be considered cheating by modifying the framework of the game. So in my personal opinion, I would recommend visiting 76 last. It's the last stop on your journey here. There's a couple of offline single-player stories, Bethesda formula Fallout experiences that you should Nimrod experience before moving on to 76, which is kind of going to be where you're going to spend your time as Bethesda continues to dump patches and updates and online support into that game, especially with the support of the TV show now. So where do you start? Kevin, you told us where we should skip over, which is going to be Fallout 1 and 2, unless you had the patience, you're not the TikTok generation, and you have the attention span to sit there with turn-based combat where you have to wait to get slapped around a couple of times and then you respond, which BSG 3, Baldur's Gate 3, that's turn-based combat. However, that looks and plays way different than Fallout 1 and 2. 76 doesn't feel like any of the other Fallout games at its core. That's because it's an online game. All the other ones, single player, offline, you can mod it, you can pause it, you can dream it, you can do it. So I'm gonna break it down to you like this. Fallout 3 and New Vegas have a bigger focus on RPG than 4, which is definitely more of a looter shooter and has some additional mechanics like base building, but ultimately the story is completely linear and the game relies heavily on the modding community. Your choices actually matter, form and shape the story. Speaking of which, the stories in both of those games are very strong, stand pretty solid, I would say. You like celebrity cameos, do you? Liam Neeson's your dad in Fallout 3. Wish I had a dad. If I did, it'd be sick if he was Liam Neeson.
Skills I've acquired over a very long career.
And in Fallout New Vegas, the dude in the checkered suit popping a cap in that ass is Chandler Bing.
Like I said, baby, all Benny needs is a stealth boy and a bobby pin.
And of course, Ron Perlman has been the voice telling us that
War never changes. War never changes.
In every single Fallout game, which was really weird that he wasn't in the Fallout TV show. I didn't mention that during my review, because how are we to know that war never changes unless he tells us? Although Walter Goggins tells us that, and he delivers every line as smooth as butter that's been melted in the microwave and then drizzled across our chins. Weird, but he's a great actor. So we've covered Fallout 3 and New Vegas have the best stories and the best RPG mechanics, not the most of them. Fallout 4 technically has more mechanics, things like base and settlement building, weapon armor, and power armor modification. But even though 3 and New Vegas have the best, most substantial, meaty, fleshed out, you're gonna control them stories, there is a reason that Fallout 4 is the most commonly recommended game for new players, as well as the most heavily modded on NYXI mods, as it was the most recently released standalone single player title. It is the best platform for mods, the gunplay is the most fluid and smooth, and even though the game has caught a lot of flack for being more of a looter shooter than an actual ARPG or action RPG like its previous brethren, the Fallout 3 and New Vegas, which I still love so much, the way it's called looter shooter is almost a bad thing. Like, damn, the gameplay formula in Fallout 4 tastes delicious. You're trying to run across the wasteland and you run into a random encounter with a bunch of raiders, dust their kneecaps off, take their loot, rinse, repeat. You've got dog meat over shoulder. You're popping into VATS with a stim pack in each nipple while uranium fever fills your ear canals. It's a beautiful experience, one that you could play over and over with Fallout 4 because it is a fantastic base or platform for mods. Mods that not only change the way the game looks, feels, but also greatly expands or completely changes the story. We're talking about new campaigns, new storylines, new fully voice acted NPCs, all done from Fallout fans, modders, you know, the Fallout community. You and me, the community. Don't bang your knee. So there's 3 Fallout games that I will frequently revisit and don't really get sick of because they're so different. There's a lot of stuff to do there. It's going to be New Vegas if I want a killer story and a real role-playing game where I'm playing a role and your character choices actually matter, unlike the perks or traits in 4 where it really doesn't form a character build that you have to follow. And that game does feel a lot more like a shooter than something like New Vegas. Granted, you can aim down sights in New Vegas, which you couldn't in 3, as you see the evolution getting more shootery, more action RPG-y, and less purebred RPG like 1 and 2. Also, the setting and voice acting in New Vegas is so superb that I don't really tire of it. Also, walking up and down the strip, especially if it's heavily modded, looks so sick. But to not tiptoe, tap dance, or crip walk around the topic, where I think you should start, Fallout 4. The vanilla experience is hella fun, one that I've experienced several times on both console and PC. And the story, while not as strong as 3 in New Vegas, I still personally enjoy it. I know a lot of people do not like the story in 4. I still think it's a story. It tells a tale for you. It weaves a yarn. Better than the story in Starfield, I shall say, I proclaim it. Fallout 4 is by far the best platform for modifications. It's the last standalone single player game where you can inject real mods without getting banned because it's not an online service game like 76 with server problems and issues, all the things that are associated with an online game. Microtransactions, server updates. I can't get this kid out of my face that's doing circles around me when I'm just trying to do a mission. Granted, that doesn't happen very often because the community isn't very toxic, but you get my point. And in my personal opinion, the gameplay loop in 4 has been the most satisfying for me. Even though it's less of an RPG and your choices don't really form or mold the final result, there is more mechanics. There's the base building, which can also be modified to where you can build these massive, crazy structures filled with settlers all playing out a role in their day-to-day life. But the shoot, loot, and scoot mentality of Fallout 4, in combination with the fact it does still have RPG mechanics, you can still pull out your Pip-Boy and equip stat-adjusting equipment. It's wonderful. Now, GameSpot just released a phenomenal video going over the entire Fallout timeline, which is a meaty, juicy video, long. And as great as that video is, if you are a new player looking to experience these games for the first time, I would steer clear of that video because it spoils the entire story of every single game and the show. And there's only a spoiler warning for the show, but all the games get spilled out. The entire, this is what you're doing, the storyline, which is awesome because if you just care about the story and what Fallout's all about, that is one you want to check out for show. But if you want to experience it yourself and don't want like a bajillion spoilers, don't check that video out. I did mention there's a third Fallout game that I do visit frequently, and that is going to be Fallout VR, which on its own is pretty stinky, a pretty terrible VR game to be honest. However, with mods, it makes it a much more Fallout-like experience. For example, a standard vanilla game, you don't even see your arms, you don't even have full IK recognition, but with a mod, you can see your arms, which is a huge deal considering when you put new armor on, maybe you put on some Raider armor or you're wearing power armor, it'd be cool to actually see your appearance change. But I do like to play Fallout 4 VR because seeing a Raider or Preston Garvey stand life-size in front of your face is quite an experience. And when you're actually moving your body around, shooting people, and it's fun. So I would recommend playing the vanilla version of Fallout 4, or if you are going to mod it, just doing cosmetic mods that are going to add things like better foliage, better textures, reflections, lighting, maybe adding some modern guns, things like that, but not modifying the story, changing it, removing it completely. And then from there, you could never really get sick of that game because the modding community is huge. There's a platform called NYXI Mods. I'm going to do a video on it. It's a very user-friendly experience. There's a front end or an app you install called Vortex, which does these mod packs or bundles for you. Just a one-click install and boom, it's a heavily modded game now. It's great.
It's good.
Video on it soon. Swear on it. Scouts honor, salute, and pinky swear. But once you've experienced Fallout 4 and you're ready to move on, I would check out New Vegas. Now 3, I'm about to get shot in both kneecaps by Fallout 3 fans.
Uzi 9mm.
played it bouncing back and forth between the Steam Deck and my PC, and I've played the vanilla version, which I will say is a bland and bleak wasteland. It is quite dreary other than a couple of points of interest or main landmarks. It is just a dreary wasteland and definitely the most boring map or sandbox, and considering that's the majority of a Fallout game is just wandering the wasteland listening to your Pip-Boy radio, not to mention you can't aim down sights in that game, which fucking sucks considering you're doing a dickload of shooting. It almost makes you rely on bats, which does work very good luckily. So if you are going to visit 3 as it is an older title, I'd mod it to improve the gameplay mechanics, the movement, the menus, the interfaces to be a little bit more modern. That game needs a lot more help or support in my opinion mod wise. Then something like New Vegas, I can play that vanilla experience right now. I can go jump on one of my consoles and play the vanilla experience of New Vegas and not complain about it. As we're Fallout 3, first 2 minutes in, I'm going to be like, oh, okay, I can't aim down sights. It just zooms in the screen. Things like that. I know I keep coming back to that, but that alone is a kind of a big deal for me. Oh, and the repair system for weapons, they degrade incredibly quickly, and then you need to use a duplicate of the same gun to use the scrap parts to repair it and suck it back down for nutrients. 3 Fallout games, I'm going to tell you can honestly just pass on if you have limited time to play games, is going to be Brotherhood of Steel, which I'm a big Brotherhood of Steel fan. It's one of my favorite factions. None of the story is canon, so it doesn't fit in the timeline or the overall story of Fallout at all, and the gameplay is also pretty fucking weak. The next one is going to be Tactics, which also builds on the storyline of the Brotherhood of Steel, as you are a new aspirant, but very few pieces of the story are canon there, which makes it super confusing that some of the story's canon, but the majority of it and the overall game itself is not. So just don't worry about those games. And the last one is Fallout Shelter, which is a mobile phone game, can be a great time waster on the go, but not something that you should play at home on your phone in lieu of playing one of the actual games on console or PC. So we covered what games to play, but where do you play them? If you're on the Xbox side of the house, Xbox One or Series, then you're in luck because ZeniMax Media Group, which does include Bethesda Studios, the company that produces the Elder Scrolls series and the, sure enough, Fallout, all of their titles are now on the Game Pass launcher, which unfortunately were locked to 30 frames per second for the longest time, but now fortunately with the success of the Fallout show, it's getting more love on the console side of the house, and finally a next generation update rolls out, even though we've been in this console generation for 3 years and the hardware could have made such better use of the pre-existing Fallout games that have been on console, PlayStation, and Xbox for a long time. In fact, I played the ever-living shit out of New Vegas on the PlayStation 3. I had the big fat glossy bad boy, which inevitably got the red bar of death. Less common issue than the red ring of death on the Xbox 360, but it struck your boy, struck me hard. But these games are available on the consoles, and if you have a local GameStop, you can get the disc copies of these games for about $17. Things like Fallout 3 and New Vegas. Slip those into the Xbox Series, get all those modern enhancements, which is very nice, and you get trophy support as well. Now on the PC side of the house, you do have 2 options. You can go with the Game Pass launcher, however, there is no mod support whatsoever, as those are pretty restricted game files. In fact, a lot of the graphical settings aren't there, but luckily Big Daddy Gabe Newell and Steam over there runs constant sales on a ton of game series and franchises, including Fallout. Luckily, I was able to do the same thing with Fallout that I've done with Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed. I've waited for it to go on sale and just scooped up the entire series, like every single game from start to, well, when the bundle is released. And because of that, I have all of the Fallout games. I play them on my Steam Deck on the go, and I play them with my cakes in the chair here at the PC. I do also have a Game Pass subscription, so I diddle with that as well. Now I want to talk at you for a second about DLC or downloadable content, expanding the story, because a lot of the DLC for 3, 4, and New Vegas adds a heap of content. Both the PC Game Pass launcher and the console version do not include the DLC. Now it's only a few bucks if you have an active Game Pass subscription. However, that startled me a little bit, but since Microsoft owns Bethesda Studios, all the DLC wasn't included, making it the complete definitive version of each game. As were when I purchased that massive bundle on Steam, that included the DLC for every game as well. And along those lines, how or when should you play that DLC? Should you play it first before the main story? Should you kind of integrate it, sprinkle it in with your playthrough whenever it becomes available, depending on your character level, which a lot of times is the case. You'll get a new radio station available, you tune into it with your Pip-Boy, and if you meet the player requirements, that new quest line becomes available to you. I personally recommend playing through the main story campaign and then beginning the DLC. Not only will you be at a higher character level, so you can kind of slap around the enemies. You're not going to be OP, super overpowered. And more importantly, you can focus on the story and not get confused with, is this part of the main story or did I accidentally begin part of the DLC? That happened to me recently with Cyberpunk. Even though I had played the campaign, I accidentally diddled myself into the Phantom Liberty storyline. And then I had played 3 missions of it and I was like, oh yeah, is this still part of the storyline? Confusion in my noggin for sure. So that is why I recommend playing the story and then beginning the DLC for these games and then play your modded playthrough. See what I mean? A lot of content in this game series. You could play thousands of hours of Fallout games, literally, and you could, and you should, and you shall, and you will, and you're gonna have a great time doing it. Thank you for watching this video. This was my personal opinion as to which Fallout games you should focus on if you have limited time, which ones are gonna give you the most sensual experience in that Bethesda formula where you're focusing on a story mission, but then all of a sudden you get sidetracked by a cool random encounter. And before you know it, you've been diddling with that random encounter for 2.5 hours because that also has led to a subplot or a new storyline you've just discovered that you're more interested in than the actual story. Now that I've told you which games I would focus on, in case you just skipped to this part of the video right to the verdict, Fallout 4 is where you should start, my personal opinion. It's got the most modern game mechanics, the gunplay is the most fluid and smooth, it's the most stable, best, biggest, juiciest platform for mods, has the biggest mod support from the community on NYXI mods, and even the standalone game, the vanilla experience is fantastic, whether you're on console, which by the way, today is going to be the next generation update, which is so fucking weird. We are 3 years into the console generation for the Xbox Series S and X and the PS5 for a game that's been out for 7 years. New Vegas, the best overall RPG. Your decisions actually affect the story, and it's a fun-ass game to play even in its vanilla unmodded state. Fallout 3 needs a little bit more juice from the mod community to feel playable or fun or make the wasteland a little bit more interesting to walk hundreds of miles across. Well, the sandbox isn't that big. It's actually one of the smallest of the series, but you know, Fallout 76 should be your final stop as it is the online service game where there's going to be patches and support, continued DLC support. For example, the story is finally in existence as there was no NPCs at launch with that game. And if you're somebody that likes to bring a buddy, play with your pals, your amigos, then absolutely an online service game, the place to play. There is a Fallout VR game, although you're going to want to mod it to where you can actually see your arms. Also, I have killed myself more times to dropping a grenade at my hip than any other VR game. The grenade throwing mechanics suck wiener schnitzel with both the Quest 3 controller and the Valve Index, which how are you going to mess up the hand tracking on a Valve Index knuckle controller? The whole palm pad is tracks all your fingers. Drop in the comment section below which one of the Fallout games is your favorite and why. And like I said, I am going to be doing a tutorial or guide showing you how to mod Fallout 4 to get a nut-busting experience, whether it's your first time playing the game and you want to leave the story intact, or you want a completely revamped experience with an all-new storyline. That is part of a new series called Adventures of Fallout, which will be dropping on the channel in the very near future, so subscribe so you don't miss that. I will catch you stallions and stallionettes tomorrow. Peace. If you enjoyed the video, liking it helps it to get seen by more gamers, so this information will reach and assist them as well. Much like the back of the TV, I've got plugs for all of my socials down there in the description below. And your wallet will greatly thank you if you check the description because there are exclusive discounts on a ton of products, including controllers, KontrolFreeks, keyboards, mouse pads, clothes, and energy drinks. And keep in mind that you, the viewer, keep this channel running. The more stallions and stallionettes trotting around the stable, the better, so mollywop that subscribe button like it owes you money, and we'll have the same amount of fun tomorrow.